Welcome back. We are continuing our discussion on sodium. With me, of course, is ExpressCare's Dr. Jitka Lom, and she is ready to answer some of your questions at home. And our first question comes from a viewer who wants to know, why did the American Heart Association change its sodium recommendations?
Oh, and that's a good question. Well, in the past it was 2,300 milligrams per day, but there was another part of that recommendation that said if you are middle-aged or older, or if you have high blood pressure, or if you're obese, or if you have any other chronic disease, then you should go down to 1,500. As it turns out, about 70% of the US population is either middle-aged, has high blood pressure, or any other some kind of disease. So they went through it and realized, gosh, you know, people are getting the wrong idea. We need to bring this number down, especially because children get used to eating salt. Then they have a lifelong salt craving and a salty palate, and then later on they have a much higher risk of having high blood pressure. And in my clinic, I see children that have high blood pressure. It's crazy, from the amount of salt that they are eating.
Our next viewer asks, how much sodium is in salt?
Okay, so we just read on the label, a quarter teaspoon had about 500 milligrams. 1 teaspoon of salt is about over 2,000 milligrams, 2,300 milligrams of sodium chloride in 1 teaspoon. So if you think about it, you need to have less than a 3/4 teaspoon of salt overall in your entire day. So that really makes it quite challenging. Definitely should get rid of the salt shaker if you're eating any processed foods at all.
And you kind of answered our next viewer's question, how much sodium should I have each day? So I guess we can talk about what happens when you have too much.
Right, so if you eat too much, you're going to notice you get bloated. You've got puffy eye bags, your hands feel bloated, your ankles may be swelling. The way to check that is see if you have a sock line, Pull your sock down at the end of the day and see if you got a nice line there from where the elastic is pressing. And you may feel, just bloated. And you can check it on the scale too. You'll notice you're a pound or two heavier when you eat too much salt. Of course, your blood pressure will be going up, and that's the most important thing about this topic, okay? Sodium is going to raise your blood pressure. If you follow those guidelines, take your sodium down to 1,500 milligrams per day or less, you will lower your blood pressure and have a 25% less chance of having high blood pressure. So if you want to not eat pills and not have to go to the doctor, cut your salt and you won't have to have high blood pressure.
Okay, you talked about it just a little bit earlier. And our next viewer asks, does sodium have an effect on children?
It does, especially because children get used to eating chips and cheesies and salty things, and then later on in life, they're going to have problems. So children that eat more than the recommendations are difficult for children because their size changes and all that. But let's say they're eating more than the 1,500 as children already, which then averages people are eating like 3,000 and up every day on a normal diet. But let's say the kids are eating 1,500 and less, they have almost double the chance of having high blood pressure as adults because they've already conditioned their kidney, which is the one that regulates the sodium balance in our body. Our kidney's in charge. So from an early age, their kidney's gotten used to high sodium, and they've primed themselves for high blood pressure in later life.
Okay, always informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Stay tuned. Healthy Living continues after this.
Your community calendar is brought to you by Taco Bell. Whether it's your first meal or your fourth meal, we've got you covered. Taco Bell, live Más.